Welcome to our show, Animation Industry Trends. I'm Maureen. I'm one of the co-founders of this show, along with Matt, who's on here as well. So today we'll be talking to Rad Sechrist, creator of Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, and founder of Rad How To School, as well as industry guests and Rad How To instructors, Chase Conley, Chris Amick, and Andy Cung. For those of you on YouTube, please subscribe to us to access our weekly shows live at Baobab Studios on Discord. Tune in every week at Wednesday, 12:30 PST in the Lightbox Expo. Oh my God, I can't do this. Lightbox Expo Discord. By the way, for all of you who have not signed up already to attend Lightbox Expo, you should. On Clubhouse, follow our club to access more of our talks. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to learn what our upcoming talks will be. And now to introduce my moderators, and the moderators will then introduce the speakers. Anika Nagpal is a creative development supervisor at Baobab, where she manages the earliest stages of story and art development on a number of animated series and feature projects on their slate. And previously, she was a production manager on Namu, which means tree in Korean, which is an animated short film directed by 2021 Academy Award nominee Eric Oh. And also Todd Webb, who you all know already, who's a storyboard artist and character designer currently studying visual media and animation at Nevada State College. And he's actually one of the members of the Animation Industry Club who came up with this talk and has been organizing talks with us. He has a passion for storytelling and animation, especially in the action-adventure genre, and has gone ahead and actually taken several classes from Rad How To School. For audience questions, everyone, go ahead and chat with us on the YouTube live chat window or on Discord. Tweet at us or use the back channel feature on Clubhouse. I'm now going to hand it over to Anika to introduce our guests. Go ahead, Anika.
Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you all, and super excited. We have such an incredible group of people with us today. So we have Rad. I'll kick it off with you. Rad's been working in feature and TV animation for 15 years as a storyboard artist, executive producer, and writer. He's the creator of Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts and the founder of Rad How To School, which we'll be talking about today. Andy Cung is a writer and board artist whose previous works include Arlo the Alligator, Trash Truck, Powerpuff Girls, Code 8, and he's now also an instructor at Rad How To School. And then we've got Chase Conley, who is a director, board artist, and character designer whose previous works include Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, Dota, Blood of Zeus, and a plethora of DC animated films. And he also teaches at Rad How To School. And then we have Chris Amick, who is a screenwriter whose previous works include Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, Final Space, and he also teaches classes at Rad How To School. That's our theme today.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for giving us your lunch hour.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So let's dive in. So Rad, you're a busy guy, storyboarding on a bunch of different things, executive producing. How did you think of creating a school, and how do you have time to do this and also everything else that you do?
I started teaching maybe, 10 years ago. I was teaching at Cal Arts, and then I taught at the San Francisco Academy of Art and Concept Design Academy in Pasadena. And I had moved up to San Francisco DreamWorks used to have a San Francisco division, and I was no longer teaching at Cal Arts and stuff, so I was like, oh, maybe I'll just teach my class online. And that was like 10 years ago, and I always did it, and it afforded me to be able to quit my job at one point and make Kipo as a comic. And so later I told a couple friends, I'm like, hey, you guys, you have projects you've always wanted to work on. You should try this online school thing. It's pretty good money. It's cool if you want to fund your personal projects. So I started bringing on friends to teach, and it kind of grew into what the school is now. But our main goal is how can we just make the cool stuff we want to make, and the school's a cool way to pay your bills while you're making stuff. I currently am just doing the school, and I occasionally will do some freelance writing, but I'm not boarding or producing anything at the moment.
Awesome. Yeah, I've heard you talk a little bit about the model behind your school, and how 80% of the money goes back to the artists so that they can fund their own projects.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot about how you love crowdfunding, which, I think is a lot more common in the comic space. So tell us a little bit about how you feel like crowdfunding could change the landscape for animation and TV.
I mean, I think the future is going to be something along the lines of fans investing versus crowdfunding. And once the project comes out, fans seeing a return on their investment. I think that's where it's headed. And once we get there, I think you're going to see $80 million movies being funded by fans,
Totally. So tell me a little bit about, I've heard you say before that, this idea of just go make something versus ask for permission and go through the studio system. And so your school is paying instructors to do just that. So tell us a little bit about the challenges of independent creating. And since you're a teacher, what advice would you give to a young filmmaker wanting to take a similar path?
I mean, this might be a good question for Andy and Chase, because you guys are in the middle of kind of trying to make your projects and get them off the ground floor.
Yeah, Andy, Chase, go for it.
I guess I'll go first. So last year I had left Netflix around it's been a year since I left Netflix, but I finished writing my pilot at that time, and I felt like I was at this crossroads of like, do I keep on working or do I board the pilot? And I realized like I can't do two jobs at once, because when I board, I can only focus on creating that one movie in my head. So I was like, I have to take a chance and take a step away from the studio. And the teacher thing just kind of snowballed and really worked out for me. So in terms of the money, like I can actually cover my bills and rent and have more to save too. So it's actually helped me reinvested my time into work on my own projects as well. So basically, I mainly just spend 2 days teaching, and the other 3 days are spent reinvesting it back into work on my pilot or taking on some extra freelance here and there. But mainly, it's really opened up a lot of time for myself. So it's been great.
I mean, just to kind of piggyback on that, like for me, I was at a similar crossroads where, for years I had been working for everybody else, and I always say this, like I acquired these skills, right? But we got into it to make our own thing. I got in when I first came in. I was like, I'm going to try to absorb all this information, so on and so forth. And then a decade had passed, and I was kind of falling out of love with it, because over that decade, though I've been involved in some really cool things, I was never involved in something that was mine, something that I actually had that level of emotional investment in and actually control. Because I felt like for me to get to the next level, to transcend where I currently was at, I would have to do my own stuff. I was going to have to do it. I was going to have to show people like, this is what I'm actually good at. I don't ever get a chance to do that, right? And I just I was about to, try to figure out, like, do I still want to try to show run? What do I want to do? And Rad was like, here's this opportunity. And I remember him telling me that business model, like what his plan was a few years back whenever he was first starting Kipo. And I was like, that is a very sound business model. I've seen him execute this. And what the classes afforded me was just like Andy said, like I get to work on, I make about as much as I was making at the studio. I'm investing in people, investing in teaching the next, and raising the bar overall, while also being able to give full-time focus to a project that's mine, is mutually beneficial. Like I get a chance to spend the brain power and that bandwidth really making that cool, because like Andy said, I can't split my focus on certain things like that, especially when it comes to story. So being able to have like 3-4 days of the week to really just focus on the betterment of like what I think where my art should go and all of that stuff, it ignited a spark. And then now I kind of just I've got direction again. Whereas I felt like for a while I was aimless in a sense of like, where do I want to go with my career, so on and so forth. So it's been great for me. It's been career and life changing in a lot of different ways. And I actually quit my job in December, and I hadn't been full time at all for a while now, which is like the first time in 10 years I could say that. So that's a very long winded way of saying I say the same thing Andy said, basically.
I mean, just to add on to Chase, like, I'm learning so much, like working on the pilot and rewriting it and like reboarding it and really pushing it through. And I remember talking to my director, like in live action, I was like, I'm learning so much I didn't learn in TV. And he was like, because you're learning stuff that should be in leadership position. So I thought that was, because I haven't really directed in TV before. So it was really great to learn things that I wouldn't have learned on the job, like taking the skill sets I learned on the job, but also like taking it further and kind of evolving my skill sets. So I feel like I've grown a lot in this last year for myself and my voice as an artist, which probably wouldn't be afforded if I was working.
Yeah, I could say the same. It's like being able to wear multiple hats and take things as far as you want them has been extremely beneficial, because you don't feel that panic of like, oh, I shouldn't be spending this time doing this. I have bills. Let me do some freelance work instead. It was like, oh no, that's kind of taken care of. So I can kind of give myself an opportunity to really think about this, which is like kind of the opposite of what you get to do in TV.
Right. And Chris, tell us how you got involved with the school and why you decided to teach.
Sure, yeah. It's funny, I have a slightly different kind of intro to it than Andy and Chase. I still on the show that I'm writing on right now, I haven't left, and my intention is not to leave. And I think part of that is just because as a writer, even if I'm working on a show that is not my own, I think I get to feel like I have a little bit more ownership over it because I get to write it. And I specifically work on script-driven shows. So I get a little bit more space to create it and make it my own. So I still feel very fulfilled with that. And I still write and pitch and develop a ton of my own stuff as well. So for me, it was really the idea of teaching, which is something that I love and that I've always loved. And being able to create a space where people like me, but, maybe a couple years earlier or maybe 10 years earlier than when I got into it, create a space for a destination that they can find and find these resources and get inspired in a way that I wish I had at the time. I'm like a serial community organizer in this space where like I constantly have to create discords and film festivals and writing groups and all of these things because I feel like I'm always trying to create the thing that I'm searching for in the world. And so this came as an opportunity to create the class that I wish I could have taken, and I went to film school. I did get to take a lot of these classes, but I didn't get to take the class that I'm teaching. And so when years ago I was talking with Rad when we were working on Kipo, and I was just fascinated with how he talked about teaching and how it was so ingrained in the culture of animation and like the art side. And it's just not really a part of the culture of writing. And something that he said really stood out to me, which was that you, as an artist, you don't really get better until you spend some time teaching. And that felt like an opportunity for me where it's like, yes, I should put myself in a position where I have to distill what works for me, what inspires me, the tools that I've found and accumulated over years and years of struggling and looking for answers. I should have to distill that, and then that'll make me better as well. And it totally has. And so it was such a gift whenever Andy actually reached out to me because he had this great idea to do a sort of a 2-part class where I help people write a 3-page scene and then he helps them board it. And it just felt like a great opportunity to try it out. And I just kind of fell in love with it. I just loved it. And so now I work really hard to find the time to do more because I am still working like very much more than full time on the show that I'm on right now for Netflix. But I just love teaching, and I just want to be able to keep creating that space for people to find these tools and find ways for them to express themselves and be able to tell their own stories.
I love that. So let's get into the platform a little bit. So Rad, when you were designing the platform, I love all of the community features that you have on there. There's, that main channel to share stuff. You organize writing nights and story pods and, weekly meetups. So I'm curious what your perspective is on learning across from fellow peers versus learning upwards, and how and why kind of you built those community tools on the platform.
I mean, it's funny. Like, I remember James Cameron came to DreamWorks one day, and someone asked him, "How do you network with people?" And he had really good advice. He said, "Never network up." Like, he was like, "Don't try to network with me. Like, go find people who are at your level and always network sideways." Because, like, when I entered the industry in like 2004, when I was in school, I'd made a bunch of internet friends, and we all made a comic book called Flight together, and we were all college kids, and we were all like trying to break in. And now that little group of kids that were in college, we're all showrunners and directors and producers and working at Disney, and like it was weird. Our little clique like all rose together because one person got a job and they helped the other person. So like I understood that that's almost. Or when I taught at CalArts, you would talk to the kids and they'd be like, honestly, we don't really learn from the teachers. We learn from the upperclassmen. So, like, someone gets really good and they teach the other students. And that's such a valuable part. Or even, like, I used to take classes at different ateliers, and you'd always be, like, drawing on each other's work and teaching each other as students. So I was like, you have to have that. You can't like not have that sort of like lateral connection with your fellow students if you want to make it.
Absolutely. And so Chris, Chase, and Andy, so when you guys are teaching on this platform, tell me a little bit about how it's different from other platforms that you've used or spoken on, and what do you think about these community features, and how do you use them in your classes?
Well, I have probably the least amount of experience teaching on other platforms. I've only done like a guest appearance at Phil Barrasa's like CDA character design course, where I kind of just talked about my own theory and stuff like that. But that was just for a day. What I love though the most is sharing resources. Like, it's just like what Chris said, sharing resources that I wish that I would have had. And I'm that's the main appeal for me is like, I know what this book or what this artist's work did for me. So being able to share that, if I have the resource in the form of a PDF or whatever, and it's just answering those little questions that people have that keep them from getting to the next level. Because a lot of times, a lot of this stuff just seems so ambiguous. And it's like being able to directly talk to them. And I have a lot of continuity with my class, where it's like, about half of the class that took my character design class then jumped into my storyboard class in order to make an action scene with the characters they had just created. And then just watching them go through the process, having that back and forth, and seeing just exactly how to fine tune not only my own process, especially whenever you are explaining why and how you do something. And then it's like, you know what, that is kind of stupid. Like, why am I adding this extra step? Let me try to just streamline this a little bit. And that has been like instrumental. I was just talking about a change in my workflow that came from popping in and drawing every day with Rad on the drawing sprint. Whereas I just started, I was like, well, I need to be able to get work done faster and more efficiently. And now I've introduced like, a new element into my workflow. So I think that is really the best part for me, is being able to share like invaluable resources, especially coming from like North Carolina. And, I'm 35 now. A lot of this stuff, we had to dig into crates to find a lot of this stuff. A lot of this stuff I had to find out via like, we're sharing VHS tapes and all of this stuff back in the day. But you know what I mean? But now it's like everything is so readily accessible. You just got to steer their eyes to the things that like, hey, take a look at this a second time. Take a look at this a second time. And being able to offer that in real time is like, I think about how that would have affected me. So I give that energy to my students. And I kind of just, it's like the most rewarding thing probably.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I only taught at Brainstorm before, which was right before the pandemic. We were at a live campus class, And then, they convert to online as well. But I think the big difference with teaching at Rad School is that it's very project based, and for me, it's the first school where you're actually infusing screenwriting into it. With having these writing classes and having like directors come in, and it's really more creator driven. Whereas I think at Brainstorm is mainly really workshopping the fundamentals and making a portfolio. But there's just a different kind of philosophy at Rad School that I really gravitate towards too. And then what's great is that, doing their workshops, you kind of like give people an idea of what you teach, and if they like it, they can follow through with it in the classes. And if they follow through again in the feedback, but you kind of create this track progress that you can work with the students that have this shorthand. So like my students in my feedback tier, they've taken their workshops, they've taken my brainstorm class, and then now they're in this script writing one. And it's just great to have that shorthand with the students, and it's just made things a lot easier for me as a teacher. But also, like now that if I'm teaching a class and there's like 100 people in it, like Chase was saying, I have to articulate really clearly for where the people to get it, and that's really kind of helped me hone my skills as an artist as well. Like I have to make sure that this tool or these things I'm teaching apply to everyone, right? And how can I pivot? So that's really been great for me in terms of growing as a teacher, but also growing as an artist. Yeah. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I totally agree with Andy and Chase. And just to add on to that, something that I think is awesome is that there's not a template for it. Like there's not a teaching template. It really was like, hey, do you want to teach a class? What do you want to do? And how do you want to do it? It's up to you. And so the impetus was put onto me to come up with everything, but it also very much felt like I could do anything. And so every time I teach a class, I try something new and I test out what would it be like to do scholarships on this one. And I can have people sign up, and the more people that sign up for the paid version, the more free ones I can give away for people who can't afford it. I did that last time and it was awesome. And there were so many people who were able to take the class for free. So like, I'm definitely going to keep doing that. This last time I also started up doing peer groups, and I just kind of tested it out. And it was like, if you want to, it doesn't cost any more. You basically get placed into a peer group of 5 people, and they become your writers group during the class. And you turn in all of your homework to them. It's up to you to find the time to review each other's and give feedback. And you basically, it solved the problem that, again, just thinking about like trying to solve the problems that I hoped people would solve for me, but nobody ever did. It's so hard to find a writer's group. Well, I'm going to take that into everything that I do from now on because it was so great. It's just like, you need a writer's group? Great, click a button. You're dropped into a group of people who want to do this with you and are going to give you good feedback. So that's what I love, is that like every time I can try something new.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I love that, like what Chris was saying too, like how we can kind of create these classes that we didn't get a chance to kind of have when we're coming up. Like for me, I started taking screenwriting classes at other schools, and then for me, like I tell my students, I felt like I was boarding with one hand tied behind my back. And then it's like, well, this should be implemented for students to learn. So that's why I reached out to Chris and pitched the idea at Rad. And I feel like the students have taken it, have seen the benefits of learning screenwriting as you're boarding as well.
It's been cool. Also, like, just one more thing on the flexibility. Like, when getting into the class, sometimes, especially, you don't know what level your students are at and what they need from you. And it offers me the flexibility to be like, hey, you know what? I might not be able to board this and lecture at the same time. Let me just extend the class, X amount of weeks. And being able to do that freely without having to worry about, some kind of curriculum or anything like that is really dope. And the students really appreciate that level of flexibility, especially, storyboarding is hard and it's very labor intensive. So being able to work with their schedules and have that flexibility is everything.
One of the cool things we started doing recently was we did this thing called the drawing sprint, which was every single day for an hour we had a different teacher pop on. And it was cool for the students, but even like I got way better at drawing from it. I think Chase, you were saying you got better too. But it's also like we have a story sprint coming up on September 20th that you can sign up for now. But when I reach out to certain teachers and I'm like, hey, would you teach a class? Certain people are just way too busy. But I noticed if I'm like, hey, this one is just an hour, and you could take 1 day, you could take 2 days. Suddenly it's like Peter Ramsey, who's directed Spider-Verse, is like, yeah, I'll do that. And then Owen, who's created Infinity Train, and Megan, who created Centaur World, they're like, oh, just an hour? Yeah, I could do that. So like that one I think is pretty dope, that we're able to bring in these like super high level teachers that would normally be way too busy. Along with also just drawing every single day is just making us as teachers get way better.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about that because even, just the level of talent you have on the platform teaching even, your 10-week classes is incredible. And I'm sure all of these people like Andy and Chase and Chris are also super busy. And so I'm wondering, like, how do you convince these people to come on and teach on your platform?
Well, I mean, the big thing is I'm trying to look for people who I think, like, I know me and Chris had pitched a TV show around town together. So, and I know Chris has a bunch of pitches, even though he was saying like he wants to stay at the studio system. I know he's pitching stuff. So the first thing is I'm trying to find people who like myself, we want to make stuff. And, I'm usually like, look, we all want to make stuff. This is a way to do it. Like, this can afford you. You teach 1 day a week, 2 days a week for 6 weeks, and the rest of your week you can actually, you're free. You can actually sit down and like work on your stuff. So those are the people I'm trying to reach out to and find. And the cool thing about that for me is, I think it's good to lead by example, because the most important thing is that you're making stuff. Like, if you're making a portfolio, why not make a comic? Why not make a short film? Why not just make something that you can use as your portfolio? But like, yeah, you made something dope. And look, the teachers are making stuff too. Like, it should be inspiring.
Going off of that, I mean, just like as a fun example, the first time I taught the class, the very first day, that morning, I found out that my writing partner and I had sold a spec feature. So I got to share that with the class.
That's awesome.
And then the second time I taught the class, that morning, I found out that all of the places we had pitched a show, everyone passed and the project was dead. And I shared that with the class. And we talked about it, and it's like, that's what this business is. And I would hope that if you're going to take a class from somebody, it's from somebody who is in the process and knows how all of that works and is, making their own stuff and doing the thing that you want to do.
I started boarding my pages because I heard Chase was doing this. Sounds like such a great idea. But I started boarding my pages for my script and using it as part of the curriculum for the class, and to show the students how I apply the stuff I've been teaching. And I feel like that's been really informative. And also it's keeping me accountable for my work and keeping consistent. So
it's like, problem solving, like running into walls and problem solving your way out of them. I think those are the moments that you don't really get a chance to see from professionals whenever you're learning, and you see finished animatics come out, but you don't see the struggles and all of that stuff. And I know that if it's my content, I will hold myself accountable 100%, right? Because I want it to be as good as it can possibly be. So, it just incentivizes me to be transparent in that. And they have a personal stake in the success of it as well, as they see it transform, and we get to talk about it throughout the duration of the class. So it's really cool.
Awesome. I love that. Well, I'm really excited to pass it on to Todd to dive in a little deeper into all of your classes, because he's actually taken a lot of your classes. And so, Todd, why don't you dive into sort of each of these instructors' like teaching philosophies and a little bit more into their classes?
Yeah, absolutely. Now that all the smart people questions are over with, I'm gonna ask a question to Andy, because that's like the last course I took, or workshop rather. So Andy, you're very formulaic with like all of your like explanations and layouts, and like that was so cool to see, because up to that point, every class I've taken was always like feel it out. But like when I took your courses, like there's like 600 and like slides that come with it. how important is structure to you when you like approach projects and stuff like that? You talk about parameters a lot because I know you're like an ex-engineer and stuff like that.
Sorry. Parameters are super important for me. I think it just came from engineering, where like that's just how you design stuff. You're given certain parameters and you have to work within them. And I feel like when I have an open sandbox, I kind of like just go. I don't know what to pick. If it's like if I'm in and out, there's only 3 choices. It's easy for me to make a choice, right?
Right.
Like it's just a cheeseburger, a double, or like just a cheese patty, whatever. And I just feel like that just. And then just observing other artists and creators and listening to interviews, are always like, I always make the best choices when I'm like pushed in a corner, right? Like you're just forced to be creative. So that's something I always kind of just is a philosophy of mine. But in terms of just the organization, I think it's helped me because I used to teach in college and teach my friends to a point where they would get better grades than me, which is annoying. But I've always been good at breaking stuff down and articulating stuff. So I think as a teacher, that's been really helpful for me, especially with like, I remember showing Rad the umbrella method and he was like, oh, you cracked it. Because like we do it so much of story and boarding, screenwriting and storyboarding is so intuitive, but to find a way to bridge it together visually has been really helpful for a lot of students. So I think that just came from engineering.
Nice.
Yeah, me and Andy were both engineers before we became artists. So I think both of us are very like step by step, do A then B.
I appreciate it. I got a follow up question from Andy because you've done stuff for like animation, of course, but like you've also done some live action stuff. Like I just watched Code 8 a few weeks ago and was mad that a sequel doesn't exist already. So like how is doing live action boarding then?
Oh, well, I mean, in terms of sequel, I'm actually working on it.
I know, I was going to that.
Live action is great. It's different than TV. I feel like, I mean, no offense to like working on Arlo and Powerpuff Girls, but it's more of a sitcom, right? But on Code 8, I feel like I'm doing more filmmaking. And like right now, like on the sequel, I'm spending 3 hours every day with the director and the DP, just breaking down the script, going over the intention. Now the director's off, so now it's just me and the DP just shot listing. And to have someone of that caliber and that experience to learn from them has been really insightful for me. I've grown so much from it, and everything I learn from them, I bring forth to the class and share with my students. Whatever like fun facts or just little nuggets I picked up. But it's been great. It's reinforced and reformed a lot of the stuff I do in animation boarding. But a lot of stuff I do in animation, I've brought forth to live action boards as well.
Cool. No, that's dope. Okay. Chase, I have questions for you. Because you're like a master character designer and boarder. And like I didn't know anyone could just like do both and be good at them. So how do you balance those two skill sets and be awesome at both?
Thank you. I don't know how to take a compliment. You know what I'm saying? Let me push my cheeks back down. You know what it is? I think that it's about synergy, right? And I always teach that in my class. It really is like about finding the skills, I think, to complement each other, right? So at first I got into character design. That wasn't ever my goal. I always wanted to be a storyboard artist. Mm-hmm. But my opportunity started in character design because of my draftsmanship. Mm-hmm. And also, I don't think my draftsmanship, my storytelling skills, though I worked in comics before animation, I don't think they were to the level of my drafting skills. So then once I started, increasing my storytelling ability, that would inform my posing, which just seeped its way into my design. And then I started thinking about design from a story standpoint, which made my designs more potent. And, they kind of just, and also too, right, you have the line mileage of storyboarding over and over, bodies over and over and over again. So then my anatomically, I got so much more sound, and I was able to push the kineticism of my work. If I wanted to break it, I could break it now at will, and know why I'm breaking it if it works, because I've put it in motion before. I've made it move. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also it helps me understand design on a deeper level in terms of getting the most potent design element wise, where you can track is you're tracking the most important things that tell a story about the character, and then maxing that out, and like I said, it all kind of feeds itself. And I've kind of always broken my artwork into like almost 4 disciplines, where I've kind of thought about it like I want to be able to have the most opportunity to make money. So I need to have I need to be able to have an understanding that can give me opportunities to do concept art for video games, live action, right? So painting, stuff like that. So I try to keep my render up and my composition up, which is fed through my through my practice of storytelling and panels and laying out shots. So I'm keeping my compositional skills up, at least in terms of storytelling, not so much illustration type things, but keeping that up and all that stuff, making sure that those skills are sharp. They inform my boards, which allows me to make my scenes feel more tangible through lighting, so on and so forth. And it's just, like I said, it all feeds itself. So I kind of broke my art into like 4 different styles, where it's like one is like a fully rendered painting. One is like I could pull the shadows back from that, and it could serve as whatever I need it to be. And then I can start dropping out detail, and then it could be trackable in 2D animation, and then drop out more detail, and then it's storyboards. But mainly building it around a system of shape language that I just kind of chip away at, like the David, you know what I mean? Just one like little chisel, tink at a time, and until I can really make it solid. You know what I mean? And that's what storyboarding does. So every day I board, I get a little bit closer to solidifying and becoming fluent in this language, because it's like a language. You're teaching, you're creating a language. So, yeah.
No, that's awesome. Sam Liu is just like on Clubhouse all the time. So whenever he's in a room, I just geek out about
Sam
my
is the
favorite
man.
part.
Sam knows so much.
Yes. He talks about you a lot, because I'll be like, oh man, I love that scene in like Teen Titans, Judas Contract. He's like, yeah, Chase did that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But then I'll list 5 other movies. It's like, oh yeah, Chase did that too. So I'm like, I have to talk to this guy at some point.
Oh, that's awesome. That makes me feel happy inside. Oh.
Glad I could accomplish that. Okay, I got a rad question for Rad.
What's up?
Okay, cool. So, like, from a student perspective, there's like, you got all these pros, all the goats here dropping all this knowledge. Depending on student skill level, how would you recommend students like balance all like the philosophies that are coming like at them at once? Because the first class I took was Justin and Chris's class on storyboarding, and then I took Andy's class on storyboarding, and then I think you popped in like at the end of that, which was a whole slightly different philosophy on storyboarding. And I'm like, I just want to storyboard. What's the right way? So, what would you say is like the best way to like balance all of those different philosophies out, even if they contrast each other?
I think one thing is the mindset. So like, take a breath. Don't let it overwhelm you. I remember I had one student, and he showed up to my class at CDA, and like he had like never drawn before, and he was just starting, and he wanted to get into animation. And I told him the truth, and I kind of thought, this guy will just walk away from this class, I'll never come back. But I was like, look, if you sit down and do studies for about 4 to 8 hours every single day for about 4 years, you do that every day. So, pop open turn on your DVD and pause it and copy the drawings for about 4 to 8 hours a day. And this guy did not know how to draw at all. Like, he had never drawn out of his head. And he went away, and he actually did that. And then literally I was doing interviews at DreamWorks 4 years later, and he shows up, and he was being interviewed for a position. And I was like, dude, what? You got really good. And he was like, yeah, remember when you told me that? It was exactly 4 years ago, and I did that. I went and I sat down and I drew. Like, I copied for like 4 or 8 hours a day, and I was boarding like all day long. And we hired him, and now his name was Danny. I think he's a head of story at DreamWorks now.
Wow.
But I think it's the fact that you might be thinking it's going to happen faster, like the rushing of it. Just like understand that it's like a 3 to 4 year process to get to a professional level.
Okay.
Working all day, because if you think like it's going to happen tomorrow, you're just going to be stressed out, you know?
No, that makes sense. I'm definitely trying to speed run pro skill levels, and it's not working.
No, that'll never work. Like it's going to be 3-4 years, depending at the level you're entering at, to get to that professional level. Like Andy, you had a similar thing.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback that off that, I always tell my students too, like, you have to accept that their journey will take long. Otherwise, you'll just panic and stress out and put all this pressure on yourself. But like, for me, I didn't start drawing seriously until I was like 24. So I met Rad at CDA. But he told me that the first day we met, he was like, this is going to take you 3 or 4 years. But for me, I just treat it as if like, okay, it's like going to college. It's going to take 4 years to learn something and get a degree out of it. So I'm going to give myself 4 years to kind of be consistently working at it. But there's no such thing as like an overnight success. It takes time. And I had to go back and learn the foundations of drawing. I spent like that first year and a half, I repeated Kevin Chen's class like 6 times. And people were like, why are you taking this class more than once? I'm like, well, it's like a sport. You know, if you're going to be learning how to play tennis or basketball, you want a coach that can be with you for that long of a time to watch over you and catch your mistakes and habits. But if you just get coached for 1 month and you bounce afterwards, like, where's the growth in that? So that was kind of my philosophy of taking like what I've learned in sports and how I grew and bring it into learning art. And then especially with engineering, like UCI was on a quarter system. So we're cramming every 10 weeks, we're cramming for our finals and midterms. And I ended up forgetting everything afterwards. So I was like, well, let me not make that mistake again. I'm just going to repeat classes until I get a good, strong grasp of everything. So I tell my students that too. Like, I even have like a PDF that I sent out all the students at the workshop and classes. Like, these are the classes I've taken. These are how many times I've taken it. Each one's at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I think I took Kevin 6 times also.
No, I saw that list. It was extensive. I have like certain ones I have highlighted. Like, I'll read this book eventually.
It's cool to know with Andy too. You were working full time as an engineer too, and basically doing this on the weekend and night, right?
Yeah. So I remember taking Tron's class. He was saying like, you're competing against people that are working at least 40 hours a week. So I was like, okay, then let me just be a part-time artist. You know, let me just try to hit 3 hours a day. So I hit 20 hours a week. That was the goal for me. So that I just made sure I was consistent with that.
We have a YouTube question from Saru Sketch. They ask, what are some pieces of media / works that you guys always go back to for inspiration? Whether that be movies, comic books, whatever.
I mean, I look at a lot of like Fully Cooley and BNA and Studio Trigger and the anime side of things. I also just look at a lot of classic Disney animation drawings as well, and kind of my style is somewhere in the middle of those two.
I always, I think I kind of reference a lot of the same stuff, but I always go back to certain films. I mean, on the animation side, I mean, I love so much live action stuff, but specifically on the animation side, I always go back to Ninja Scroll, mainly because it's like, that was the first anime I ever saw. I was in 4th grade. It was very inappropriate at the time, but I saw that, and it like just imprinted on me, and you can see the lasting effects of Kawajiri and Yutaka Minawa's stuff on influence on my work. But I don't stage things like that necessarily. So I always go back to like Jinro. I love that. Ghost in the Shell. Tokyo Godfathers, which I think is like, I actually got into Satoshi Kon through Tokyo Godfathers when I found out that like every board artist in Korea has that copy of that book on their desk. And so I was like, okay, I'm trying to understand this language. and it kind of changed my staging. So I'd say that, and I reference a lot of for my boards when it comes to kinetic energy in my boards. I reference a lot of Yutaka Nakamura, the Gynex guys like Will Trigger now, right? And yeah, some other stuff like that. But I always go back to those classics, though. Like I'd say like Jinro, Ghost in the Shell, Paprika. I watch a lot now just because I love the staging, and sometimes Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, depending on how I'm feeling. Yeah. Obscure. They're obscure. They really don't have much to do with my artwork. Sometimes I just watch them to realign myself with my influences, because we're exposed to so much with Instagram and stuff like that. It's easy to see something and want to be like, oh, I want to try that. And it's like, no, let's just kind of stay the course and continue refining what you've been doing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to them, like pretty much same inspirations or influences. I love Yo Yoshinari and Kenichi Yoshida for their like character designs. To add on a director, I love Mamoru Hosoda. I've been studying a lot of his stuff. I just love how
Hosoda so much.
Yeah, his shot design is so economical, it's so impactful.
That lateral pan stuff is like crazy with it. Sorry, I'm hijacking.
No, that's great. That's great. But yeah, that's pretty much what I would add on to that.
Ooh, I get to be different because I'm talking about writing.
Nice.
For me, I feel like a lot of it, I accepted a while ago that everything I write is a balance of Monty Python and the Holy Grail and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And it's either, sometimes it's 80% Monty Python and 20% Eternal Sunshine. Sometimes it's 90% Eternal Sunshine and 10% Monty Python. But like the absurdity, the character comedy of Monty Python, and then the like gutting character emotion and unique and dynamic storytelling devices of Eternal Sunshine, that's the kind of story that always fills me up and gives me everything. Because like I want it to be witty and also dumb and absurd, but I also want the characters to feel very real and have incredibly high emotional stakes. And I also want the story to be told in a very unique and specific way. And so anything Charlie Kaufman and Monty Python are like my wheelhouse.
Nice. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I don't think you can separate art from writing. Like, that's why I really want to push people to if you're an artist, to take those writing classes. Because everything Chris is talking about in terms of like being emotionally invested, but also being witty and interesting, like that should be coming through in your art too. Like it's are you just drawing a person just standing there, or what's going to get you far and connect with people who just aren't even artists? Like someone could draw actually kind of poorly, but they're better concepts. And to me, that's actually more important than draftsmanship. Is like, are you trying to convey a concept?
That's a good point. I mean, I kind of got to that. That was like a crossroads for me too, where I realized like, to get to this next stage, it's not about technical skill. It's like I have to become more clever with my ideas and my concepts and my work. And the only way to do that is to get better at story.
Mm-hmm. And we've got, looking at these questions that are coming in, both Fatima from Discord as well as HIMUWU on Discord had questions about getting into the animation, especially coming from a place, outside of the industry like engineering. So thanks, Andy, for speaking to that a little bit before.
I think it's really the same answer. It's like, do you have the time? Do you have a couple years to learn the skill and really dedicate yourself? It's not a thing that you sit and go, okay, I'm going to spend 8 hours every day. I'm going to spend 4 hours every day, and you can make a choice like that. I feel like it's actually, you need to find the thing that you become obsessed with, where you just find yourself doing it 4 hours a day or 8 hours a day. And if you have to, you shouldn't have to find motivation. Like, you shouldn't have to be like, okay, I got to sit down and do this. What you should be doing is like, what is the thing? Like Chase was talking a little bit earlier about having fun. What is the thing? You need to find the thing that you are obsessed with. So is that being a storyteller? Is that drawing backgrounds? Is that designing characters? Is it storyboarding action scenes? Like, you need to test and try a bunch of stuff, and then eventually you find that, oh, this is the thing I'm obsessed with. This is the thing I can't put down. This is the thing getting me out of bed at 6 a.m. to board before work, or that on my lunch break, I'm like, oh, I got to do this, you know? And if you can find that, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Okay, so since I've asked a bunch of questions from you guys, we have some more questions about the school. Specifically, I'm interested about the upcoming story sprint. Can you guys like talk about that a bit, like how that's going to go and like what we're going to do? Because that's a class I'm going to join for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, we have daily classes from a bunch of like top industry professionals. So like I mentioned before, director of Spider-Verse, creator of Infinity Train, creator of Centaur World, myself moderating, Chase will be on there, other directors, the storyboard artist for the live action, Stephen Platt, who did Iron Man. And what it is every single day there's a 1 hour class. So boom, boom, you're forced to do this every single day. You're drawing along. People are popping in, they're sharing the screen, they're showing their process, they're talking about story. We have two of the writers from the Sony upcoming K-pop Demon Hunter feature film that are going to talk for an hour
Sold.
on how to pitch stuff and how to create a project. And so every single day you'll be popping in. If you get the recording option, you could miss class and get the recording. Some of them will be sold independently, the ones that are just like 1 or 2 days. We have Jake Green, who voiced Jamak. He's going to do like an improv class of sorts. And for me, taking improv is interesting because when you're writing or boarding, it's almost like slow motion improv. So that having a class like that, it really hones your skills on how to write better. But yeah, it's just going to be, you're hopping in every day. There's also a mentorship option you can sign up for where there's 5 different teachers, and every week a new teacher will take a look at your work, and you can be boarding stuff you're watching in the sprint. So if a teacher does something, you try it, but then you can actually meet up with the teacher or a mentor and get a review each week.
That's cool.
Or if you're just doing a portfolio piece, like an 80 to 100 panel sequence over the course, or a short film over the course of the story sprint, you could just be showing it to a mentor each week and getting notes. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Anika, do you have any questions while I go find some more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, you guys have had so many students come by in all of your classes. What advice do you have for students to get the most out of your classes? And maybe thinking back to when you were in their shoes as a student, what techniques really accelerated your own learning that you'd like to tell them about?
I mean, I would say it's very low pressure, because I remember I've taken a lot of classes where are you working full time? Can you really only just watch the lectures and you're not really going to have a lot of time to fully engage? That's totally fine. I've taken classes like that. I just want to learn some new stuff. And then on the opposite end, like maybe you're not working, you actually can like dedicate hours and hours every single day. That's cool too. But like, I don't want people to ever feel like, oh, I signed up for this thing and I'm being pressured to put in more work than I physically have time for. So I would say, take it, if it's just a thing you want to have fun and you're not going to take it that seriously, or you're working full time and you don't have that much time, then come have fun and hang out with us. If if you're like, dude, I'm going to be an artist, I'm spending 8 hours a day, I don't have a job, like I'm in college or whatever, then come do that too. You know, either way is fine.
Amazing. Chase, Andy, Chris, anything to add to that from your classes?
Yeah, just kind of echoing what Rad said. I think, the way that I set up my class is to have a lot of theory that you can listen in on, and there's a lot of information in every single class that's kind of like broken down into different, hopefully digestible segments that take you along the process of developing an idea, developing characters, developing a premise, all the way up through breaking story, how to think about story, how to think about characters, outlining, and then writing, and then revising. So there's a lot of theory built into it that you can kind of just listen in, and hopefully it expands your mind a little bit and helps you think about some problems that maybe you've been facing and gives you some tools to attack that problem the next time you get to it. But I've also built in homework for each week as well. And I've made sure that there's a way for you to also practice it and put it into effect if you have the time to do it, because for me, that definitely, for my money, that's the way to really learn, especially when it comes to writing. And I'm sure for drawing as well, although I don't have the skill, so I can't speak to that. But for writing, at least, you just need to be able to do it a bunch of different times. You need to be able to practice it and try different things and fail and pick yourself back up and try it a different way, or just try it again until you succeed. And so everything that I do on the school, whether it's my class or I've got an upcoming screenplay format workshop that really is just like all of the ways that you can use the format to help you tell your story. It's all about giving you the tools to do it yourself and put it into a practice so that you feel comfortable using it next time, so you can just get better and better.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off Chris, my class is very similar. I think because me and Chris are very analytical. But like, I have like the fundamental series coming up that I'm doing. But a lot of my big philosophies on teaching people how to problem solve, like what Chase is saying. So much of like screenwriting and storyboarding is all problem solving. So you'll see me talk about different tools and how we kind of implement different ways to troubleshoot, and kind of like find workarounds, or how do we go at different vantage points to kind of solve stuff. So a lot of my class is about that, because I think there's so much stuff about like, why is a medium shot, or why is it that like online that you can find, but I haven't really found a place where people can really talk about problem solving. So I wanted to kind of create that type of environment in my class.
That kind of is like the whole job, right? It's just creative problem solving every single day. And like being able to pick yourself up after the days when it's so hard and you're just like, I'm terrible at this. Why does anybody pay me to do it? And then through the practice, you then realize, oh, right, like it's hard because if it were easy, everybody would do it. And then you find the way to solve that problem, and all of a sudden you have this incredible breakthrough. And it's like, yeah, every single day is hard. And so I feel like, yeah, Andy and I, the way that we build a lot of our stuff, we talk all the time. And I've learned so much from the way that he teaches, is just being able to create those tools for people to have those breakthroughs, because until you get to the breakthrough, that's the thing that holds you back and makes you say, I'm not good enough. Maybe I should just give up. Maybe it's not worth it. So like, that's my goal. I feel like that's what we're all kind of trying to do, is give people the ability to have those breakthroughs.
Yeah.
I think that the most important thing too is like a sense of community. Like we have our school Discord too, which anyone can join.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like the community is awesome. They help each other out, like the upperclassmen you were talking about in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up because I want to be super respectful of your time. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with us. This is actually just, I've been monitoring the numbers because I'm a numbers geek, and this is like one of our highest attended shows. Thank you.
We did it.
So, good job.
Yeah.
On Wednesday, September 8th, we'll be hosting a masterclass on some of the industry's most talented feature film and series story artists. Present company. Like, if any of you guys want to come on too, let us know. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Animation In Club. to access our future talks. And again, you can catch us every week on YouTube at Baobab Studios or on the Lightbox Expo Discord, and also here on Clubhouse. Thank you so much, Rad and Chris and Chase and Andy, for coming on. Is there anything else you want to say about the How To School?
Just thanks for having us. This was fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
If you have a ton more questions, I might email them to you instead.
You can send us questions on like Twitter and the Discord and stuff too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, go on I think the Discord's probably the easiest way to catch up.
Yeah, I think we're all on there.
Excellent.
And Rad, how do people get to your school? They just type in Rad2 in Google. And...
radhowtoclass.com.
Okay. Everyone go sign up. Cool. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
All
everybody.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.